There was a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when you realized you needed to become someone else to stay safe. Maybe it was a slammed door, a sigh loaded with disappointment, or the cold silence of a room that should have held warmth. Whatever it was, your nervous system understood that your authenticity wasn't welcome. And so, without knowing, you began to build your first mask. You learned to watch before you spoke. You learned to shrink before you asked. You learned to soothe others before anyone soothed you. These were not personality traits. They were survival responses carved into your body long before you had words. You weren't choosing a role. You were adapting to danger. This is the part people often misunderstand. Your mask was genius. It kept you out of trouble. It helped you predict storms before they hit. It allowed you to say, "I'm fine," while your heart beat like a trapped bird. You became the child who understood everything adults refused to see. But here's what no one told you. Every time you hid your fear, every time you bit your tongue, every time you carried burdens that were not yours, something inside you dimmed. The real you, vulnerable, expressive, wild, learned it was safer to disappear, and that disappearance became your identity. This video begins here, in that quiet childhood moment, the moment you became responsible for emotional fires you did not start, the moment you learned that survival requires silence. But survival is not a life, and this journey is about remembering the difference. Growing up in chaos forces a child to outgrow themselves. Maybe you stepped into the role of referee, therapist, caretaker, peacekeeper, long before you understood the weight of those words. You learned that your needs were inconvenient, that your tears were too loud, and that your joy needed to be measured carefully. You became an adult in a child's body. In homes marked by emotional neglect, unpredictability, or fear, children don't get to explore who they are. They learn who they must become. You watched the moods of the adults around you like weather patterns. You studied tone, silence, and subtle shifts because your safety depended on it. Hypervigilance became your mother tongue. This is why, even today, you notice everything. The change in someone's breathing, the pause before a reply, the way tension spreads across a room. Your brain was never allowed to relax. It was sculpted in a battlefield it didn't choose. And now you call this being responsible, being strong, being mature. But what you call strength began as necessity. What others admire as calmness was once a shield. Your selflessness was born from a childhood where focusing on yourself felt dangerous. You learned to be the adult because there was no adult available to be one for you. And so the mask began to solidify, shaped not by who you were, but what you needed to survive.
Growing up unseen does something irreversible to the psyche. When no one asks how you feel, your emotions become ghosts, even to you. When no one checks in, you learn not to check inward. When your pain is minimized or ignored, you begin to question whether it even matters. This is how emotional invisibility becomes identity. You learned to be low maintenance. You learned to avoid conflict. You learned to never need too much, want too deeply, or take up too much space. And people praised you for this. They said you were easy, mature for your age, so well behaved. But inside, you were starving for someone to notice you were not okay. This starvation doesn't disappear in adulthood. It becomes the background noise of your relationships, a quiet ache pretending to be independence. You struggle to articulate your needs because you were trained to believe that your needs create problems. You minimize your emotions because you fear they will burden others. And perhaps the saddest part, you don't even realize how invisible you feel. Emotional neglect teaches you to hide your own internal world from yourself. You can name the feelings of everyone in the room except your own. Your mask of calm wasn't born from serenity. It was born from never having a safe place to fall apart. Hyperindependence can look like confidence, competence, self-control. But beneath that exterior lives a child who learned that relying on anyone was unsafe. You didn't become self-sufficient because you wanted to. You became self-sufficient because you had no choice. Asking for help meant rejection, disappointment, or anger. And so you learned to carry everything on your own. You didn't just do things, you did things quietly. You solved crises without letting anyone know you were drowning. You celebrated your victories alone. You mourned your losses in silence. This was the price of survival. Now, as an adult, your mask tells you that softness is weakness, that vulnerability is dangerous, that leaning on someone is an invitation for abandonment. You might even feel ashamed when you struggle, as if needing support makes you defective. But this shame is not yours. It was planted in you by the people who failed to show up. Hyperindependence feels strong, but it's actually fear wearing armor. A fear of being let down again, a fear of being too much, a fear of being unprotected. You built an identity around strength because no one protected your fragility. The truth is, independence wasn't your dream. It was your survival strategy. And it's okay to question it now.
For someone who grew up in emotional chaos, intimacy is not naturally comforting. It is disorienting. When someone gets close, your nervous system doesn't interpret it as safety. It interprets it as risk. Because closeness is where the wounds originally happened. Closeness was where you were overlooked, dismissed, or hurt. So as an adult, you may crave connection but fear it just as deeply. You long for someone to see you, but when they do, you retreat. You want to be held, but touch feels too exposing. You want emotional honesty, but sharing feels like stepping into a spotlight with no armor. It's not the person that scares you. It's the vulnerability. Your mask whispers, don't show too much. Don't rely too much. Don't reveal the parts of you that were rejected before. It convinces you that the safest version of you is the controlled one, the cool one, the self-contained one. And so you sabotage closeness without realizing it. Many people mistake this for commitment issues or avoidance, but it's deeper than that. It's trauma teaching you that intimacy equals danger, that connection equals pain, that love equals unpredictability. But intimacy is not the enemy. The fear is. And fear is not your identity. It is a remnant of a childhood where emotional closeness was unsafe. There is a moment many adults raised in chaos eventually experience. The eerie sense that you're performing even when you're alone. A feeling of disconnection from your own reactions, as if you're playing a role you don't remember auditioning for. This is what happens when a mask becomes too tightly fused to the skin. For years, the persona you built was praised. People said you were strong, calm, competent, grounded. They saw the version of you that was crafted in survival, not the one longing quietly beneath it. And slowly, without meaning to, you began to confuse the mask for the truth. You learn to smile when tired, comfort others when hurting, and pretend to have it together when you were falling apart inside. You learn to adapt to every room, every person, every emotional climate. This adaptive brilliance became your personality, but it also erased your sense of self. Now, You might struggle with defining who you are outside of what others need. You might feel lost when someone asks what you want, what you feel, what you dream. Because the mask was never built to express, only to protect. And protection always comes with a cost. The cost is authenticity. The cost is connection. The cost is you. Children raised in unpredictable environments learn to question themselves before they question the world. They internalize blame because it gives the illusion of control. If it's my fault, maybe I can fix it. This becomes the script they carry into adulthood, a script of chronic self-doubt. Even today, you might assume you're the problem. You overthink every message, every tone, every silence. You replay conversations, searching for the moment you said too much or not enough. You apologize reflexively, not because you did something wrong, but because you fear being a burden. This self-doubt isn't a flaw. It's the leftover survival strategy of a child who was punished or ignored for expressing needs. A child who had to scan for danger inside themselves because the external world was impossible to predict. Now, that inner critic sounds like your own voice, but it was trained by the voices that failed you. And the more you understand this, the less power it holds. Self-doubt was your shield, but shields become cages when held too long. Healing begins when you start questioning the doubt instead of yourself. When you're always the strong one, people forget you have limits. They come to you for advice, support, emotional labor because your mask makes it look easy. You rarely break down, rarely ask for help, rarely show the cracks. And so the world assumes you are unbreakable. But inside, you are tired. Tired of holding everything together. Tired of pretending you're okay. Tired of being the safe place for everyone else while having no safe place of your own. This exhaustion is not weakness. It is grief. Grief for the childhood where you were forced to be strong long before you were ready. You learn to compress your emotions into manageable fragments, to smile through overwhelm, to keep functioning even when your body screamed for rest. And because people celebrate your strength, they rarely notice your suffering. This kind of strength is lonely. It feels like living behind glass, visible but not seen, present but not held. Strong, but not supported. And beneath the mask, your inner child whispers, "When is it my turn?" You deserve a life where strength is not your only option. Healing is not about dramatically ripping off the mask. It's about gently loosening it, piece by piece, with compassion, the kind you never received. It begins with tiny acts of honesty. Admitting you're tired, saying you need help, letting yourself rest without shame. These are small rebellions against the role you were forced to play. At first, vulnerability will feel dangerous. Your body will react as if the world is collapsing. That's not weakness, it's conditioning. You are teaching your nervous system that softness is no longer a threat. This reparenting process is slow, tender, and deeply courageous. You might cry more. You might feel lost. You might feel like you're regressing, but you're not going backward. You're going inward to the parts of you that never had space to exist. The child you once were is finally being allowed to step into the light. Removing the mask is not abandoning who you were. It's integrating who you hid. It's allowing your authenticity to coexist with your strength. It's rewriting an identity built in crisis into one built in truth. Healing is the moment you realize you no longer need to pretend to be invulnerable. Your mask helped you survive, and for that, it deserves gratitude. But you are no longer the child trapped in the emotional storms of a home that wasn't safe. You are an adult now, with choices you never had back then. You can allow yourself rest, softness, connection. You can choose relationships that nurture instead of deplete. The identity you built in crisis does not have to be your final form. You can learn who you are without the pressure to perform. You can learn what you truly feel, want, and need. You can learn to trust peace instead of fearing it. The mask protected you, but now it limits you. Healing is not about discarding your strength. It's about expanding beyond it. It's about realizing you deserve support as much as you give it. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were silenced, ignored, or overlooked. You're not replacing the mask. You're outgrowing it. There's a life waiting for you where you don't have to monitor every room, every mood, every silence. A life where you can breathe without bracing, love without performing, rest without guilt. A life where you're not just surviving, but actually living. So let me ask you, gently, honestly, bravely, when did you first realize you were wearing a mask that was never meant to be permanent? And as you sit with everything you just heard, notice what's happening inside you. Maybe there's a tightness in your chest. Maybe a memory you haven't touched in years. Maybe a sudden clarity that the strong version of you was never the whole story. If something in this video stirred a truth you've been avoiding, take a slow breath. You're not broken. You're remembering yourself. And every moment of awareness is a step toward healing, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. You don't have to rip your mask off overnight. You just have to stop believing it's all you are. Let yourself be curious. Let yourself feel. Let yourself be human again. This channel can't replace therapy, but it can walk with you through the rooms you've been afraid to enter. It can remind you every time you show up that your story didn't end in childhood. It's unfolding now, with you in control for the first time. So before you go, I want to ask you something that might stay with you long after this video ends. What part of your mask are you finally ready to set down? Tell me in the comments. Your sharing might become the thread that helps someone else finally breathe.